your what we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party.
What's up, party people? Gather round. My name is Talib Kweli. Welcome to another fantastic edition of the People's Party with Talib Kweli and my lovely co-host Jasmin Leigh. Give it up for Jasmin
That's me.
How are you feeling today, Jasmin?
Absolutely amazeballs.
Amazeballs. I'm pretty fucking amazeballs too, because today's episode is a special one. It's one I've been looking forward to doing for a long time. We have a lot of friends of myself on this show, but not a lot of people that I started my career with and have been around for as long as I've been around. This man we have on the show today, his name has come up a lot with other artists on this show. We were both on Rawkus together. He is an entrepreneur. He is a producer. He is a label owner. He's an incredible MC. He has been a part of major situations in hip hop. It's very hard to have like one hit record. It's very hard to have like one dope group. It's very hard to have like one dope verse that everybody likes. This dude started Company Flow. This dude started a label called Def Jux. This dude started a phenomenal group called Run the Jewels. People, put your hands together. Give it up for El Producto.
Yeah.
El-P in the house. El-P, how you feeling? Finally got you in the house.
Loving those shades, baby.
I like the shades and the shoes.
Thank you very much. I wanted to impress you guys.
He was trying to one-up me.
Job well done.
What's up, man?
How you feeling?
Great. I feel great.
So I want to take you back to the Gavin Convention.
Oh, shit.
I think it was 98 or 99. We were promoting our, selling our wares
Right.
at the Gavin Convention. And you invited me to your hotel room to smoke a blunt. And we smoked a blunt, and we were in San Diego. And you were telling me that you had figured out this military plan because we were in San Diego and that something was going to happen in the military. And that's all that I remember from the story because I was high. So I was going to see if you remembered what it was that she was breaking down for
Hell
me.
no. Of course I don't remember. I don't even remember that. I was just talking to someone recently. I was like, I think that I'm headed towards like early stage dementia.
Oh my
like,
God, me too.
Like I feel like as a person, you have to flex your memory. You know, you have to remember things. And people tell me stories all the time about shit that like.
That's
like,
a good
you
life,
don't
man.
remember we were together and
That's
the
a good
guy
life.
caught on fire and he jumped out the window and I'm just like, it's not ringing a bell right now. Like I worry that through the use of marijuana and also just a complete disregard for my own past, that I may not have the capacity to remember things anymore. But at that time, I'm sure I probably had a lot of pseudo insight into the future, Yeah, I one time when I was my wife, who's a stand-up comedian,
Yes.
she
Jasmin
tells
does.
us, oh, cool, yeah. So she's, of course, when you have like when you have a wife who's a stand-up comedian, you have to be okay with 90% of the jokes being at your expense, pretty much.
Oh my God. Tell my boyfriend. He can't.
He can't handle it? No, I mean, I particularly like it, so, I think it's hilarious, and she definitely tells a joke about, this is based on a true story, which, when we first got together, so I was, I had bouts of being a little manic and paranoid, I think. When the world is insane and you think that you're starting to see something that is, it's unhealthy. And
Or it could be a logical reaction to an insane world.
true, but this isn't.
Okay.
What I'm about to,
That's not what this is.
Not what
on
it is.
occasion, it's logic. On
Okay.
other occasions, it's fantasy and panic. And I remember I saw some. I was like, sweetie, we got to go away out of New York this weekend because I saw some YouTube video where they were like, this is real. I'm telling this because I have no particular shame about
His
being
Randy Quaid moment.
about being an idiot. Yeah. And it was like, I saw some YouTube video about like how the Simpsons predicted 9/11 and how like this was, and then they were predicting that something was going to happen on this day. And I was like, sweetie, and I showed her the video. I was like, we got to get out of town. And we got out of town. And afterwards she was like, you're a fucking asshole. And I was like,
That's what it was.
Yeah.
You was telling me something's going to happen. I just don't remember what it was that you were telling me is going to happen. We were in San Diego. You was like, yo, it's gonna happen here.
Wow.
Yeah. Doing good, Jamie. Really killing the game with the predictions, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Your production style, it sounds to me like old New York. I like the noises that you hear in old New York.
Yeah.
What's the difference between old New York and how New York is now?
You know, I do think that those, you know, it's funny that you say that because I always explain that about my production because throughout my whole career, it's always been like, why is it so fucking noisy? You know what I mean? Why is it so noisy? And I'm like, well, because every time I'm making a beat, a siren is playing outside of my window, or someone is yelling, or a car is crashing, or a dog is barking, or, you know, or like, you know, you're in Brooklyn now. I live in Williamsburg now. Every Friday night, there's an air raid siren that goes off to let the Hasidic Jews know that that it's the Sabbath and they have to put down whatever they're doing. And every time, inevitably, I'm making a beat and I'm like, that shit sounds fucking hot. What is it? And I'm like,
that shit's funky.
And then I'm like, oh, it's the air raid siren. Right. It's worked its way. You know, the sound of the city, the clanging and the clutter of the city and the noise has always made its way into my shit. I don't think it's really changed that much in terms of that, you know, between old New York and new York, you know. The difference between old New York and new New York is that I wouldn't be living in fucking Williamsburg in old New York, you know.
That's right.
But it's I always looked at the sound thing as maybe my attempt to organize all that chaos that's around me, you know? Like if I could capture it and put it somewhere that I wanted it, then maybe it would make a little bit more sense, you know?
Now we were just talking in the back about you've been working with Rick Rubin.
Well, we've been working up at Rick Rubin's studio, you know, and Rick comes in and his flip-flops and sits down on the couch sometimes and we talk and shoot the breeze, but we're not working with him on the music.
Not
you
yet.
know? Well, I mean, it's just not what this project is, you know.
No, but even with that, whether it's RTJ or whatever, I'm sure that would be somebody that you would love to work with.
Rick is obviously, you know, just a super important figure and an amazing dude and definitely had a hand amongst a few other people in just even making me want to do this shit.
Right, because he was producing noisy Run DMC records.
Exactly.
Run the Jewels is like in the tradition of Run DMC.
Sure.
I know that you and Mike share an affinity for Ice Cube, for America's Most Wanted. And that was sort of like the connection.
It was. That was what we found with each other in terms of the ground that when I was first asked to work with Mike, and I went and met him in Atlanta, and it just popped off. Like it was magic. I was curmudgeonly. I was like, I was like, all right, well, I knew his shit. And I was like, well, I'll go. We'll do a few songs. But I was in the middle of making a record for myself. I didn't want to get involved with anyone else. I had just stopped being involved with a bunch of other people's records and stuff, and I was like, I don't want to do this. But one of the things that we connected on immediately, just on some rap shit, was when Ice Cube went, you know, left NWA, went to the East Coast, and immediately hooked up with the noisiest, funkiest, most crazy production squad that I would say it was maybe to a degree the antithesis maybe of most West Coast stuff. Although to give credit to NWA. They were pretty noisy too, you know what I mean? And so it made some sense, you know.
Dre says that he was trying to do the Bomb Squad.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he said he was listening to Public Enemy records and said, I'm trying to do the gangster version of that.
And that's what it was, yeah. So there was some through lines, but we definitely bonded on that. And the Run DMC thing for sure. I mean, that's why we do two guys in black denim on a stage with a DJ, and that's our show.
The Run DMC, as opposed to like the funk, where it's like the costumes and everything.
Yeah, and you know the thing that was cool about Run DMC, and I know you remember this, was they were the first dudes to come out to just dress like normal dudes.
Like the dude on the corner.
Yeah, and you were like, wait a second, I could potentially be one of those dudes. Like I could, like Run DMC made you feel like you could join the group. It wasn't
like my
crazy.
Adidas
You didn't have to wear like
yeah.
flat feathers.
It's like I got Adidas on. Like, I'm my Adidas. That's the song, right?
Like, yeah. Oh, these are my Adidas. Right. You got yours. So we love that about we love that about that, you know, and we loved that sort of feeling. We wanted people to feel like, I love the fact that Run DMC were super powerful and hard, but they weren't out there literally threatening you, you know, with violence. You just knew that these dudes had personal power. You just knew that these dudes were powerful.
Like he's like, I went to St. John's University.
Yeah. And you're like,
I'm smart. I wear
Right.
glasses.
Right.
I have Adidas.
Exactly. And you're
Right.
like, and you're just like, damn, he's the hardest rapper in
hard.
the world. Yeah.
Right.
So that's very much true about Run the Jewels and our whole sort of philosophy about it.
I hear that in your production. I hear NWA.
Yeah.
I hear Ice Cube, Bomb Squad Ice Cube.
Sure.
I hear Run DMC.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that it's super socially conscious. You know, Zack De La Rocha, when he left Rage Against the Machine, Rage was like a rock Public Enemy, right? And now you got Prophets of Rage, with Tom is out there doing his thing with Be Real and Chuck D. But
Who
Zack,
I just saw 2 days ago. Shout out
Chuck
to them.
D?
yeah, you saw the show.
No, I saw them. I
Okay,
hung
you saw
out
them?
with them. Yeah.
Okay,
They were
yeah.
up in Shangri-La, yeah.
Zach, when he left Rage, came and stayed with you a little bit, right? What was that like?
That
And
was-
has all that music come out?
No, none of that music
None of
has
it's come
ever come out. No, it's interesting. I mean, that's a lot of people don't know that, but right when they split up, Zach straight up just came to Brooklyn and lived in my apartment for like a month, and we worked on what was going to be his. You know, he wanted to work with the guy from Company Flow. On
Yeah.
you know, on a solo record. What was that like? It was probably great for me and not so great for Zach because there was like 5 of us living in my apartment. I was making beats in my bedroom. I was like, oh, you know,
It
yeah,
sounds like that's what he came for.
maybe, but he didn't leave with much music. Like, you know, like
But those are just the creative spaces and being around that energy. Just, you know, everybody's hustling, everybody's trying to get it.
I think that was what was cool about it. And I think that was one of the things that drew him to it. But he was just a fan, and he was kind of one of the first dudes that, like, big dudes to come to me and be like, he could have gone, let's be real,
Yeah,
Zach,
Rage
at
was on top of the world, like-
peak of
Yeah.
Rage, he could have literally gone to any producer on the planet. He came to my apartment in Brooklyn. That's
Right.
how real Zach is.
He's a real dude.
He is one of my best friends. I consider him to be, you know, family. And I also think that he's one of the most genuinely sincere, real, down-to-earth people that in this business that I've ever met. And I think that people don't. I think that it seems that way from a distance, but you almost don't even believe it that anyone is quite that real.
Right.
You know what I mean? But he
Right.
really is that dude, and he. I was just a kid, man. I was just making beats in my bedroom, literally. I wasn't a producer, you know. So
Right, yeah. You were just making beats, a beat maker.
yeah,
at that
I
point.
kind of, I sometimes I wish that I could beam my mind back in time to that point.
But
you know?
you worked with Zach again years later on Run the Jewels. Zach is so specific about his politics. So is Mike. You sort of fall in between that. You're not. I hear you say political things. You have political records. You know, patriotisms. You know, certain things you say in your records. I'm like, okay, but you strive. It seems to me to not be apolitical, but to not sort of lean on that.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's a cool thing between me and Mike because because we identified pretty quickly when we started writing jams together that there were these through lines that we shared. You know,
Right.
In other words, like he goes very micro, he goes specific.
Very
you know,
specific, yes.
and I've always attacked it from a sort of a bird's eye view. I've always attacked it from more of a larger picture perspective, a philosophical perspective maybe that didn't apply to just specific sort of ideas. And between the two of us, we kind of zone in on something. And I liked that about Run the Jewels. It was like, we knew that we both had the same, just from talking, becoming friends, we knew that we both had the same ultimate perspective, you know, which is that we will fight intellectually and in our hearts against the abuse and control of mankind, and that is what we share.
Right.
We share that definitive belief that the power structures that exist in this world are incorrect and abusive, and it's cool to write with somebody where we seem to get to that point in different ways. You know what I mean? And it makes for, I think, a bigger picture of a song. You know,
Right.
And so and you know, and also Mike is also the other thing that we share is that we also just love talking shit. You know,
It's the balance between the politics and the dick jokes.
Absolutely,
You
100%.
gotta have a balance.
100%.
Right.
Although on this new record I'm not making a dick joke. Although I think I have one I'm working
Come
on.
on, man, we need some dick
Who
jokes.
makes more dick jokes, you or your wife?
No, she's not making jokes. What are you trying to say?
She's a comedian.
That was a good dick joke.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't. I just usually make them on rap records. No, I think that there's a fine art to the dick joke, and I think that you shouldn't push it too far. I think that you have to really nail it. You know.
Let me ask you this: company flow, and a lot of your music, and it's and Mike especially. Forgive me if you disagree with this, but it's very testosterone driven.
Sure.
You know, in all the best ways possible.
Sure.
Do you feel like that's on purpose?
I think that we have that. I think that you know that there is like you know two boys talking shit
Right.
thing about it, and I also think that it's tongue in cheek, and I think that it you know, certainly for me it's tongue in cheek, and I don't take
Right,
myself
right.
particularly seriously. I don't think
Right.
really Mike does at the end of the day either. And then there are these moments. What it does is it allows you to have these moments of softness, of these moments of another type of spirit. You know what I mean? That can be potent and can mean something. You know, I think that it's really important in a record. For me, it's really important in a record for those moments of calm or introspection or something that is pensive or that means something to you, to be earned and to land importantly in a record. You know,
Yeah.
if you're making an entire record and every song is, or if you're seeing a film and every scene in that movie is a tearjerker.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not gonna cry.
Yeah.
You know? It's like,
Yeah.
all right, I get it. You know, this is you know, this is a
You're trying
tearjerker.
too hard.
I like the fact that y'all have Zack De La Rocha and Gangsta Boo, like in the same circle.
100%.
That's what
And this
Run the Jewels is for me.
100%.
Yeah.
And Run the Jewels is this collection of
It's proletarian.
elements and also this collection of disparate elements that we're mashing together. You know, for us, it's like we're saying, listen, there is no conflict of being completely stupid and also being politically aware.
Right.
There's no inherent conflict for that. We can have fun and say the wrong thing as well as say something that is important to us and that means something. And in fact, we think that makes for a more dynamic type of artist than just, you know what I mean? And I know you feel this because it's like, you know, no one wants to be one thing, and it's really hard to make sure that you carve that space out for yourself. You
Yeah.
know.
And you're more relatable too, because no one wants to feel like they're just getting preached at. They want to
Right.
feel like it's someone they could be down to earth with as well.
No doubt.
And the fact that you said that is so important because I know for me in social media, I know I always bring up social media, but on Facebook, it'll be like, oh my God, Ghana's drowning and you guys want to talk about dick jokes. And it's like, you can do both. Like,
Yeah.
you literally can. You don't want to just focus on everything negative that's going on in the world. You want to focus on things that's going to give you light, make you laugh.
For sure, and comedy is a huge part of what we do, and it's a huge part of because we started making these records really just like, let's be the teenagers in the bedroom that are making our favorite rap record right now, you know, and we're not out here to save the world, but at the same time, we will, as men, stand up and say something that we believe is important, and we have no problem doing it in the context of the records that we're making.
That's right.
Even if the last time you heard me, I was saying that I had a unicorn horn for a cock. You know, and then the next record I'm gonna, you know,
Actual lyrics.
Yeah, and then you know, and then the next record we're gonna do a song like Thursday in the Danger Room, or we're gonna do a song like you know, there's a litany of sort of jams, especially I think always are on our records, and in the last one maybe even more so than there had been before. But it's just, you know, I'm really happy with it. I really like, you know, I like the fact that we've carved a space out for ourselves as artists.
Not just for y'all, but for the fans, for people like me too. You know, y'all carve a space for me. Like when I see Run the Jewels, I'm like, I'm still viable. That's how I feel.
Awesome.
You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's a space for me.
Sure.
You know, because these are my peers. These guys are saying the same things I'm saying.
Yeah.
That we come from the same seed. When Killer Mike, when Whole World came out, this is how I met Killer Mike. He called me up on the phone. I didn't really know who he was. I'm like, okay, you just the dude from the Outkast song. We spoke
That
for
was
2
my
hours.
song, though.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's like, yo, you one of my favorite MCs. I want to pick your brain.
Yeah.
You know, when I listen to Killer Mike as a fan of his, he's referencing Raekwon all the time.
Yeah, man.
He's representing like hardcore East Coast hip hop all the time. People don't think about it.
That's
that
what he
with
grew
him.
up on.
Yeah.
I mean, he's literally born the same year that we are.
Okay.
Right? We're all three of us the same age. And him and his crew and his whole contingency, his whole people, they came up on the same records that we
Right,
came up.
Shala Ray.
They also had another batch of influences.
Yeah,
as
they
well.
had the Atlanta thing is a whole different thing. It's trap culture, strip club culture, the whole like Martin Luther King, black business empowerment culture is a whole different thing in Atlanta. But you know, that's a real pure MC, as are you, which makes sense why
Thank
y'all
you.
linked up.
And that's how it goes back to what Jay-Z said, like, you're hearing the rhymes, but are you actually listening?
Now you're sort of like underground white Jay-Z at this point. You know what I'm saying? I got a better one for
Thank
you.
you.
I got a better
I've been waiting years
My
for
whole
someone to
life
say
for
that.
that.
I got a better one for you. You're like the Björk of rap.
Well, you know, as Björk once said,
I say that as a compliment because she's one of my favorite artists. But she has her own sound, her own genre. So when I hear your music, I'm like, that's some El-P shit. Like it's unmistakable.
I've always had that for better or for worse, and that's one thing that is true. You know, it's worked against me, but it's worked for me as well. And you know, but yes, I do have something, and that you can hear, and it's simply just because I just always was in my own zone with music, and I tried to use the weird influences that I had and applied them to all the influences that we share. You know. I grew up on film scores as much as I grew up on rap music.
I always think that. Whenever I hear your music, I think I'm seeing visuals. Like when I see I know you're a fan of Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
Right. And when I see the film work he does,
Sure.
the music that he does for films, I'm like, that's some El-P could be doing that.
I just did that.
Okay.
I just scored a film. Yeah, that's not out yet, but it's a film called Fonzo, starring Tom Hardy, about a syphilitic Al Capone.
Tom Hardy is
at
gangster.
the end of his
Everything he
life.
plays is some gangster shit.
He's Al Capone.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah.
See, I was like, he do is gangster shit.
But it's different. It's different. It's a very weird and interesting and cool take on it. It's him at the end of his life. You know, Al Capone died of untreated syphilis.
Oh,
so
whoa.
that's literally in his 40s he died, and he
Syphilis was a
Took him out,
killer
right?
back then.
yeah, you didn't get it
The
treated.
volume.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
you're
still is
dead.
now. Yeah, it
Yeah.
still is now. And what it does is it eats away at your brain. And what happened to him was that, as I know now just from this movie, was that by the time he died, he had the intellectual capacity of like a 4-year-old.
And nothing, okay, I guess we should watch the movie.
Speaking of that production style, right? Like my introduction to you was 8 Steps to Perfection and the End Burners, that era. Company Flow broke up in that era.
Yeah.
What happened?
Man, it was insane. We kind of broke up right as it was about to pop.
Okay.
You know, we had a Beasties tour lined up. You know what I mean? It was like it was about to pop. And what happened is basically that we just couldn't fucking stand each other after a while.
Just being around each other all the time.
It just was it was I was really young. Just was older than me. And he was young. You know, when I
Yeah.
think about it now, you know, I mean, shit. When I met him, he was 25. I was
Right, you
what,
look at that 25-year-old like, damn.
Yeah, and I was like 17. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man. What happened? It kind of broke my heart, to be honest. At the time, I really thought we were going to ride this one into the sunset. You know, I think that there was a combination of things, but we just got stressed, man. You know, it was just a lot. A lot of stuff started happening, moving really fast for us, all of a sudden, and I don't think that Just really wanted it. You know, and I say this respectfully. Like, I know the dude still. You know what I mean? Like,
Are you still in touch with him?
I haven't spoken to him in a few years, but like, you know, whenever we do speak, it's all good. And you know, I got love for him. I looked up to him like an older brother for a long time, and you know,
He's an incredible MC.
absolutely. But you know, there's just a difference, man. I just don't think he really was into. He just wasn't really into all the fucking razzmatazz
Well, I mean, you
and
also-
running around and all that shit. And it was like, and also, you know, I was a little arrogant prick, you know, who butted heads and was stubborn, and I had my vision, and I wasn't, and you know, we just clashed. You
You're
know,
also a producer, though, not just in terms of making the music, but you've always, from my perspective, not just been about the rhymes and the music and everything gotta be, but the business gotta be right. We gotta produce. We have to have product out. We have to keep it moving. Seems to me not everybody's like that.
we were learning, you know, we were learning, but we did share that perspective. You know, it kind of dawned on both of us at the time that we were like, we were getting ready to put try and get up. We were both working in a Tower Records mail order department.
The one
on Lafayette.
Okay.
That was my
I used to
last
sell
job.
incense out of that, outside of that.
No,
Tower
you
Records.
didn't, Talib.
did.
You were the incense man?
I was for a couple of months.
Did you have the
Damn, son.
oils too?
I had the oils too. I had the Calyx. I
We
had
might
the
have met.
sandalwood.
What year?
I had the Blue Nile.
What year?
This was
Yes.
This was that was like 93.
Oh, no.
94.
So I was like 95, 96 maybe with this.
Do you know my friend Rubix?
I don't know.
Rubix, he was on that hip hop. Thank you for doing Hip Hop for Respect, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're the only white MC on it. No, you and Invincible. Shout out to Invincible.
Oh, I was about to say we have a white MC that doesn't start with the E, but it does.
He does.
Yeah.
Evidence said there's a whole.
It's not allowed in our union.
You gotta have a
Evidence
E.
took us down the white MCs with names start with E rabbit hole.
Oh, did he?
Then when, yeah, we kept it off. He's like, I don't want to do this on camera.
It's too controversial. I might get assassinated.
Like y'all had a meeting. It was like, all right, everyone gotta start with an E.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
my man Rubix, he's gonna be so mad when he watched this. They had his picture up in that Tower Records
Oh,
for trying to take a CD.
Trying to steal one?
amazing.
And that Tower Records, they used to put your picture up if you try to steal.
Well, let me
my
just say, let
God.
me just make him feel better by saying that we stole the shit out of anything that wasn't fucking nailed
Right.
down at Tower Records.
Right, you're still from
so,
Brooklyn.
So here's the thing. So we were
Don't
working
steal
there.
at home, ladies and gentlemen.
We were working there. We were making.
Steal
Every
at Tower
time we
Records.
take some money.
That's why they went out of business.
Commercial.
Yeah, we would take our money that we earned there.
Mm-hmm.
We would go record, you know, at night. And back then, when you recorded, you had studio time. You had to already have the song completely done before you got there. So
Oh
you
yeah,
could just,
there ain't no
'cause-
writing in the studio.
Nah,
you're
no,
paying
no,
for
no,
this.
never that. Yeah. And then we had this thing
And then
going.
recording at night, you get in the engineers who have been working with the bigger artists all day, and they're giving you the cheap rate at night.
and the cheap service.
Yeah, cheap service. You get what you pay for.
Exactly. And so the next day we would go to work and we continue this process. Finally, when we decided to print some shit up, it just dawned on us. I remember this moment where we were just like, we were gonna put a single out. We were gonna fund it ourselves and press it up ourselves because we were like, fuck it, we'll do this to give to labels to get a deal or something, you know. And then we were like, you know, you could fit like 8 songs on this thing.
Hello.
You know?
Right.
It was like literally this, as simple as it was. It was like, why are we just putting a song and an instrumental on this piece of plastic? It's going to cost the same amount of money to put 8 of these songs on here. And that's kind of how it started. And then we used Tower Records mail order department to send it out all over the country for free.
That's what jobs
and
are
gems.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what jobs are for.
Just was like working the computers and the orders. So he'd do whatever magic he had to do over there. And I was in the back with the work release dudes doing the wrapping up the CDs. I'm probably personally responsible for sending out over 2,000 Bone Thugs and Harmony CDs to America.
Wow.
Hand wrapped by El-P.
I really wish that I would have utilized my work resources better because I worked at Applebee's and I alcohol for spring break. So
See, that works though. That's a good one.
didn't do anything for our careers.
Motherfuckers were getting the record next day air with us. You know, you're like, how do these dudes afford to send all this shit to all these DJs? Yeah.
So I've heard you describe the company Flow sound, and I suppose this could be for most of the projects you worked at as sort of like a sonic version of a violent home invasion.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said that.
God.
You said that to me. We were smoking a blunt in the room.
I really
together.
have to stop saying things.
Or stop smoking.
But you also said that Company Flow was not about having a bad time. It was about having a good time while being bad. And I feel like you've also talked a lot about being attracted to heavy music, like just darker, heavier sounds. We were signed to Rawkus at the same time. Black Star was more jazzy, melodic. It was not. We were in the same circles in terms of like a cruise, but sonically, it was a different thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like there was a competition?
Between us and Black Star?
Yeah, between like Company Flow and Black Star, because we were operating in the same spaces and sort of vying for the same fan base, but just different pieces of different sides of people's brain.
No, the only time I ever thought there was a competition was when you got to the BDP beat before me. I was like, fuck those dudes.
Yeah, man, that was Most Def's idea.
I was mad about that one.
Yeah.
I was mad about that one.
did a good job on that beat. Yeah.
No, I mean, you know, it's true that we, you know, I think that you look at different people's groups and there are just different strains of influences and all of them are legitimate and that all of them you can even trace back to the older hip hop groups that we loved, you know. People like BDP and Ultramag and Run DMC tended to have a more sparse, a little bit more jagged sort of like, you know, type of thing with stabs and like more of a sinister, you know, sort of jagged approach. And then there was all the stuff that we loved that was jazzy or mellow or more funky, more soulful. And I think that my influences really were rooted in shit like BDP and P and Run DMC and like old schooly D and like, you know, Fat Boys, you know, shit like that. So I was, and Slick Rick. And
big hip hop.
Big hip hop records with stabs and you know, to this day, it's kind of my thing.
Like we weren't as lo-fi as like a Mad Lib per se,
Right.
but it was definitely more of a warm, fuzzier thing
For
that
sure.
we were doing.
For sure, and that's why it worked. You know what I mean? That's why we coexisted, because it actually, to be fair, never felt like a competition. You guys always were doing your thing, and the thing about that period of time, that era, which was so special, I think, is that there were so many different types of, like, there were so many people doing different shit. The ones that really stood out, the ones that ended up being sort of what we would consider some of the groups that were defining of that era, and I think Company Flow is included, and I know Black Star is, and I know there was a couple others. Everybody had their slot that they filled that created this picture where it was like, yo, there's a lot going on in this movement, in this scene. You know? And there was, man. You remember the open mics and shit. Everyone would get up and had a different style, and everyone was into that different style.
If you guys were, it was, for me, when I got to Rawkus, what was exciting about Rawkus to me was Black Attack was there. And Shabam was there. And Sir Menelik was there. I wasn't familiar with Menelik, but I was familiar with Kool Keith, and he was doing his thing with Kool Keith. And Company Flow was there, and it's like, y'all were there. Y'all established it before we got there, you know. But also, and I don't know if Jared's gonna love me or hate me for saying this, but I feel like Rawkus co-opted this whole independent as fuck thing.
Well, I think that Rawkus certainly recognized it, and I think that they had the ability to do something about it,
to platform it.
Yeah, I mean, like, for us, it was sort of just, I've said this before, the independent as fuck thing was us sitting at the table. This is exactly how it happened. Sitting at the table, cutting out letters to paste onto a label, to Xerox or something to put on our 12-inch, and we're sitting at my kitchen fucking table, me and Big Just, and it's just a mess of bullshit all over the table, glue sticks, and I literally looked at this shit. I was like, yo, we are independent as fuck. Like, we're not just independent. We're sitting at my kitchen table independent. And it was a joke, and we laughed about it, and it was hilarious. And then we were like, yeah, we should put that we should just write that. I was like, I'm gonna write that, because I pretty quickly recognized it as being like, yeah, we are. Actually, we are, and that's cool because at the time. nobody was making it okay or even that you could be proud to not be on.
When I first met Jared, I met him through John Forte at Makiba Mooncycle's crib, and he came to sign 7 Universal and Population Click, which became the Rose family. I remember Jared and Brian, these 2 white guys from Brown University, came to the hood. They came to Crown Heights, and John Forte was there, and everybody was rhyming their ass. Everybody had a blunt and a 40. Everybody's trying to get a record deal, rhyming their ass off. And at this point, Jared and them, I don't even think that they had y'all yet. And I remember John Forte being like, "Why ain't you rapping?" And I'm like, "This indie label shit. I'm trying to be on a major. I don't know
Right.
You're talking about this indie shit. I don't want to be independent." 2 years later, a short 2 years later, now my girl is pregnant. Now I lost my job.
Yeah.
You know, Most Def Yasin Bey come to me. He's like, "Yo, I think I'm gonna do a single with these Rawkus dudes." I'm like, "Jared and Brian?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, they gave me some money." I was like, "They gave you some money?" How much money they gave you? And then my whole thought pattern changed. That's when I was like, because I was still like, I'm trying to be signed a major and have dancers and all that.
No doubt.
You can still get some dancers.
I should get some.
Should have got some
Yeah.
dancers. That
Hire me. Come on, put me on tour, baby.
Scrap love it though.
Let me know when the audition is. I'll tell you, man. You know, the meeting those guys, it was very interesting, and I think Jared can attest to this. Basically, when we were having a moment in the underground, you know, but we had pretty quickly through word of mouth and through like people like Stretch and Bobbito and like, you know, we had started to get a lot of attention just from the little music that we had put out, like the EP that we had put out, which was called Fun Crusher. When we started talking to labels, all of a sudden people wanted to talk to us, and we did the rounds, and we did the rounds everywhere from major labels to independent labels on the West Coast to independent labels on the East Coast, and Rawkus were the ones that said yes to what we thought it should look like. We were like, well, we'd love to do this, and we'd want to own the masters, and we want to do a 50-50, you know, deal, and we don't want to promise more than one album because we don't know how it's going to work out. And at the time, these were ludicrous thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, no, there was really no
chokehold on the game at that point.
At the time, there was really no established.
There was no Cash Money deal that where they were like, oh, they're getting, you know, this amount of percentage, and none of that existed.
But we went into these guys' offices and who, you know, and said the same thing that we had said to other people who had been like, we can't, you know, then forget it. And they were like, yeah. And so that was what's, you know, I think that was a really genuine and place for us to jump off with that shit was because it was like, well, if they're in that headspace where they respect that idea and they're willing also to give us money, you know, then these guys are serious. And so when you say like, oh, the co-opting of it, I think that what they did was they finalized or they expanded the thought. I think that we had the thought of independent as fuck, and it was something that became a rallying cry in our collective, right? Yeah. And we helped define that attitude. I think that the best thing that Company Flow did in that realm was maybe that we gave people a little bit of a straightening of the spine a little bit, because there was no independent record label system for dudes like us. It was either you were on a major or you just were going around to different places of freestyle. We would go to Washington Square Park or fucking New Eurekan and like freestyle.
You're right, there was no middle ground.
There was no middle ground. Rawkus became the first step for a middle ground for people, the first people to recognize and say, actually this stuff, and they felt the same way that I did, and I really felt this politically, that this stuff actually has a monetary future. This stuff, we can actually sell this and not take this and try and change it, but actually show people what this is and try and explain what this is. So me saying independent as fuck may have meant something to kids and the people in our scene, because I think that it just gave you a little dose of like, yeah, actually, you know what because I actually don't really want to do what's going on right now in the music that's happening on the major level. A lot of it is not appealing to me. It's not really what I want to do. But then getting with Rawkus was the next step in that actually becoming real. And once that started to be established, you know, the independent as fuck rally cry was a little bit less needed, right? It was the stepping stone towards, because really all we ever wanted was just to be a part of, just to have the opportunity to participate, put our music out, show people what we're doing.
Let other artists hear it and be like, oh, I like that.
Correct. And it's even changed even further, you know? I think that my business perspective has always never been about something that's rigid and stiff. It's always been about how can we get closer to, you know, this not being an issue? How can this sort of weird caste system that seems impossible to jump over? You know, you're a kid. I mean, do you remember trying to run around and, I'm going to try and get a demo deal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to bring a demo up to Jive Records or some shit. You know what I mean? Throw it in their box. You know, like...
You meet like a promo intern and you're playing your demo for some like promo intern who doesn't even know the A&R at the label.
Right. You know, it was this seemingly impenetrable system of nepotism and favors and things that you just, if you're just a kid making music, like, you don't know how to deal with that. You almost have to, at that time, you almost had to become an industry dude even to get into the industry.
Do you feel like your perspective has changed going from pure artist to now have started several industry label situations?
Yeah, I'm back to pure artist.
Okay.
You talk often about doing things that scare you creatively. What are the things that you're doing that scare you creatively right now? Like, what's the next frontier for you?
Well, thank you. That's an interesting question. Well, we're starting to shift, and we've several irons in the fire on TV and film. Like, that's sort of the next thing. We've both started doing some little acting and some stuff here and there, and we're developing a couple of Run the Jewels based projects that are in the TV and film world, and that's something that I think is really exciting. And you know, I look at Run the Jewels as kind of like the Blues Brothers a little bit.
I can see that.
You know what I mean?
That's my favorite movie.
Yeah,
I know everything about that movie.
The best movie ever. And you know, so we're kind of doing our...
You're on a mission from God.
We're on a mission from God, yeah.
It's from God.
But mostly we're just assholes in sunglasses.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Well, you are a Pisces, and it's kind of in your blood.
You've done a little too much research on me, I think. It's a little...
She's also Miss Cleo, apparently. Every episode we talk about people's signs.
I know.
So that's one of the scary and interesting things that's happening.
Super
Yeah, and you know, and all those, you know, we're sort of, for the first time in my career, those doors have started to kind of crack open, and it's that's a fun thing. But really, I think that what I meant about that also was that I trained myself to when I got really scared, if someone offered me an opportunity to do some sort of music with something that was outside of my wheelhouse, or that I didn't know if I was capable of doing, that I kind of forced myself to say yes. Right. In a lot of those situations, because I was like, you know, fuck it, I'm here once, you know, and I better not, like, I didn't go to high school, you know, like
at all.
I went for the first couple of years. I got kicked out of 2 high schools, and then I went to musical engineering school. So I've been literally just prepping to be a musician and a producer since I was 16 years old.
Now, your father was a jazz musician, and he played in piano in bars and restaurants and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, when sometimes you're in the mall and someone's playing piano, or you're in a restaurant and someone's playing piano and no one's paying attention. Yeah. And I always focus in on that because as an artist, I feel very blessed to make art for a living that people pay to listen to, not they paid for something else and it's just in the background. Yeah. I always look at those artists with so much respect, because I'm like, for you to be doing that.
Did you have a parent who was a musician too?
No. Okay. My father was into music. He was like a DJ a little bit, but he wasn't a musician.
Well, I'll tell you, you sound like you were, because I had the same thing, right? And it's because I grew up sitting in these bars and sitting in these restaurants, watching my father be ignored, and watching my father play and sing, and seeing him, and it was, you know, even as a kid, I understood that it was uncomfortable and somewhat degrading, because motherfuckers are ordering chicken.
But it's a part of the game.
It doesn't even matter how good he might be. No. They might want to clap. They feel awkward about it.
Well, here's a dude who decided that he loved music enough to sit through that, to go through that, and to be given the opportunity to play music, even in an unglamorous setting, even in a nowhere near the fantasy of what it is to be a professional musician.
Right.
But I would watch this man, and I would see him lose himself, even in this stupid restaurant, you know, lose himself, close his eyes and sing, and I knew that he was happy. And if not for a moment, if not for the length of a song. And that stuck with me in a big way. It made me realize, and it's always a thought that I've kept with me, and it made me always check myself and make sure that I was always in love with music, because I don't want a job. But you know, if I can play music and I can remember that is what it is about from the very beginning, that's literally the whole reason why I started doing this. And as soon as it starts to feel like it's drifting away from that, it's getting more complicated. That's why I don't do a fucking record label anymore, quite frankly, because it was ruining my music experience, you know?
It's not the creative
it was tough. It was like, I don't have any time to just be the weird ass person I am.
Wow.
And you know, I stop when I see these people. When I'm in a restaurant, I tip those motherfuckers.
That's right.
You know, I acknowledge them. I clap when they've done playing. And it's because I saw this man who I, you know, looked up to some, you know, as a kid, and being ignored and loving it anyway, and knowing that like that's the power of this whole shit. Like you have something at your disposal that if you harness it beyond whatever the potential is for you to make money or for you to have a career and all that shit's cool, but it's fleeting. It may or may not be here forever, and it certainly may or may not apply to your life at a certain point. But if you can get to that place, if you can meditate and get to that place where you're happy just even creating or even being able to do that thing you love, then it sort of felt to me like a good thing to remember. Like, all right, well, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario, I'm in a restaurant.
And no one comes.
Doing what I love. Closing my eyes and being in that moment. And that's something that a musician knows is there. We know it's there.
It's like changing your definition of success.
Yeah.
When I started, my definition of success was LL Cool J, Run DMC.
Yeah.
Now my definition of success is being creative for a living. The fact that I can wake up, I can be creative, and I can feed myself with that. What else can I ask for? Nothing, right?
Nothing. And ambition is great, but being in touch with the simplicity of that is a saving grace, you know, I think, to me. And it's really interesting that you brought that up, because I deeply feel that. You know what I mean? I really do.
Lil Rel said to me, because I do stand up, and it's kind of the same thing as an artist, because you can get on stage and you're at a bar show and no one's paying attention, or you can get on stage and it's like one or two people. And he's like, every time you get on stage, you need to make sure you're having fun, and you need to make sure that you're there for yourself.
Yes.
And if you can't do that as an artist, then you just need to find another profession.
Facts.
I agree with that. I think I've said this.
And it's really hard for comedians.
Oh,
really hard for
baby,
comedians.
let me.
I mean, I'm married. Like my wife. You have to build a shell.
Oh yeah.
And you have to build more than that. You have to build the mechanism inside yourself to enjoy the pain.
No matter what. Yeah.
You have to enjoy masochistically, enjoy Schadenfreude, you know, and you're the victim, you know, the worse it is, the better it is, you know, the worse it is, the better the story, you know.
Right.
And try falling off the stage in Atlanta, so.
You fell this summer?
Oh, baby, yes.
Really?
That
sounds hilarious.
I've fallen off so many stages.
It was horrible. So I just killed it in my head. I'm like, yeah, fuck you guys. I just killed it. And then I just fucking walked off the stage, like a full tumble. I have it on recording. It's like my whole body just fell down from my ankles.
You should show that as an intro to your set. You know what I mean? Just
it was horrible.
Yeah. I've eaten shit.
Were you sober?
Several.
No. I was sober. Yeah.
Wow.
I was sober afterwards.
Of course you're
It was a
sober.
sobering
In the
experience.
hospital. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, one of the things I love about Run the Jewels is it's not this we're colorblind. You know, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's the opposite of that. Yeah. It's like, here's a fucking black guy from Atlanta. Here's a fucking white guy from Brooklyn. We share this hip hop experience. We both love this America's Most Wanted album. Let's make some jams. Yeah. From the time I've met you, I don't know if you know this, but people think I don't like white people.
Huh.
What?
I don't know where they get this from. But from the time I've met you,
really,
must be those
never
Twitter
been
people
about this guy. It's always been like, you have always been an integral part of this culture. It's never been a race thing. You know, the idea of colorblindness means I erase your experience. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't. When I see this, when I see you, I see a white guy. Yeah, I see everything that comes with that, right? And so when I hear your perspective on hip hop, it's a white guy from Brooklyn's perspective on hip hop. I've read interviews with you when you said when you started, you were the only fucking white guy in the room in a lot of these rooms. There was no.
Yeah, but I never fucking cried about that shit. It was just what it was. You know what I mean? It was just that I wanted to be a part of the music, and so at the time that I was coming up as trying to be a part of the music, it was not normal for there to be white people actively participating in the music or trying.
But you dealt early. You dealt with things that people who are woke now talk about early in your music, in terms of race. You didn't do it, and like you said, you talked earlier about doing like a top-down, like a macro way of dealing with it. But before I ask you this, let me say this. I also read you talking about how people expect rappers to talk about politics, but don't expect artists and other genres to talk about politics. Why do you think that is? And do you feel like you as a white artist have to speak about white privilege or have to speak about racial issues?
No, I don't.
But you do speak about them.
Do I?
Sometimes.
I don't know.
You do.
I don't know when I did that, but I mean, I think that I tell you, I never. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I never engaged that conversation, at least in the sense of like, I just, you know, I always found it a little distasteful to talk about or to put myself in any type of light that might insinuate that there was this struggle that I had because I was white, that I was trying to get into rap or anything like that. Like, I remember back in the day, they did an article on The Source. And they were doing this article about, this is maybe 96. 97 maybe. And they were doing this article about white rappers, which is not a normal thing. It was like worthy of an article back then. You know what I mean? And even then I refused to do the interview. And this is an article basically about me and Eminem.
At that point.
This was really what it was about.
All the E's.
Eminem was back in 96?
Yeah. And
just started.
97 maybe. And you know,
he was such a phenomenon.
Right.
That it shine a light on the white MC.
Right. I mean, at that time, it was sort of, those were, me and him, I guess at that time, right, in that moment, were the examples of dudes who basically weren't embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like, who basically were, like, considered, like, actually respected in the scene. And even then, I was like, you know, because I just never thought, it never really was something that, you know, what I've said to people, I've said this, because over the years I've had these questions thrown at me that are from various directions about it. And I've basically been like, look, I am white, but I'm not an expert on being white. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't tell you. I think I had a little bit of a different...
You're an expert on being El-P.
I'm an expert
but
on being...
But it would be great if we could not have to be experts on being black.
100. And this is one of the reasons why I find it distasteful, and always did, to insert myself into a conversation that, quite frankly, should be thrown at the bottom of the pile. Because there are other conversations that need to be had. And for me, it was just like... I think that I just knew early on, basically, that I was just going to be me. I was just going to be myself. The way that I grew up and my group of friends and everything, this was, you know, I don't think that it was necessarily atypical, but I think that, you know, me coming into the game and doing this shit, I always was super excited about getting into what I considered to be an amazing musical culture. That was something that it was what I was obsessed with. And I never looked at it like, I don't know. I just didn't have that sort of feeling of entitlement. Like this shouldn't be hard. I actually thought it should be hard. I actually knew it was hard, and I still was like, it doesn't. You know, I'm not going to make it about that. Like I don't know.
Your answer is interesting to me when you were like, well, do I? Because when I think back, I'm like, okay, this record early, or I think about you being on.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So Early was definitely written from the perspective of like somewhat apathetic sort of person, a quote unquote ally or a liberal, right? Who does connect and does seem to, it feels like they feel connection to the plight of of another group of people who are being who are under the thumb of authoritarianism on a regular basis. And showing the disconnect, the verse of that shit ends with like, basically him being like, well, do this again, another day. You know what I mean? And then Mike's was the verse of the guy who actually legitimately was feeling the results of what was happening. And we just thought that was an interesting and true and perspective that and for me, I felt like this could be, I'm glad you picked up on it.
Well, you jumped on the hip hop for respect thing, and then you there's like some anti-Trump stuff that you guys will engage in on stage, which that's not really a race thing. Like Trump is bad for everybody, But when I say that, I say that because what's interesting to me about your answer is, I feel like even if you were actively not trying to do that, you can't help but do it because the culture is based on black consciousness. The people that you grew up on, that you're the Ice Cube, the Public Enemy, you said you was the only thing I was competing like, oh, y'all got to that BDP. You know what I'm saying? That's all straight pro-black, 5% conscious rap. Like, some of these guys are saying the white guy's the devil. You know what I'm saying? And it's just the rap that you're growing up on sonically that's influenced you. And then you end up in a group where you're working with Zack De La Rocha and Killer Mike, and it's like you by default, it's like it's almost like, so even it doesn't matter if you're actively trying to make sure that you're trying to be a good ally, but not putting yourself in conversations that you feel like you might be overstepping in.
No, what I meant by that was that it was never my inclination to play up that aspect of what I was and what it was about. And I always wanted to just be a voice and a writer and an artist, and so I really never engaged with that question of, well, what was it like for you? Because you're white, and it was just something that I'm just not particularly even really that great at answering, because I've always been focused on trying to just make records where you can listen to my shit and not feel like I am someone else other than I am, or attempting to be someone else other than. And growing up on all that music was really interesting for me, because it really opened my fucking mind, man. I don't know if I hadn't had rap music, I don't know as a middle-class white kid, that I would have been exposed. I don't know how long it would have taken me to be exposed to the truth. I think it helped in the lifting of the veil. And when you're growing up, we all grow up in our communities with things that are put upon us, and some good, some bad. A lot of them are perspective, and I don't know how long it would have taken me if I didn't have rap music to realize that there was a whole hell of a lot of bullshit that was being.
Rap has done that for a lot of. I mean, it does that definitely for people of color, but you hear those testimonies from white people all the time. That it becomes,
music is amazing in that regard. You know what I mean? It's like you wonder sometimes. I wonder sometimes. How people can be fans of rap music,
but not fan of black people,
or
a fan of our culture, or a fan of wearing our clothes, or a fan of selling do-rags for $10 million, or kente cloth, all of that.
If empathy and connection doesn't come with it, then what's the goddamn point, is what I'm saying. And so, where I grew up, the way I grew up, the people I had, the circle of friends that I had, just came from, a lot of it just came from just going to school in Brooklyn and just being, yeah, man, I feel very grateful that assisted in pulling the veil away from my eyes, and it all ended up contributing essentially to my political perspective. That feeling that something was wrong.
Yeah.
That feeling that something was a lie. That feeling that we are being told, there's a false reality being spun for us, and we're asking to participate in it. And very young, I started rejecting that, and it got me into a lot of trouble. It got me kicked out of schools. You know, it got me my life shaken up to the point where, you know, and I kind of went a little crazy even. I feel like I had a period of time where I felt a real rush of having this thing lifted and being like, fuck, it's all a lie.
It's
Did you go to a black school or
No.
did you go to a mixed school?
I went to a mixed school. Yeah.
Was
liberal.
this the Center for Media Arts?
That's where I went to musical engineering school. Yeah, when I lied about my age. I got my GED, lied about my age, went to this place. All of a sudden, I was a 16-year-old kid pretending to be 17, hanging out with like 30-year-olds who, you know, just wanted to be engineers.
I read that Mobb Deep's manager was managing you at that time.
Mobb Deep's maybe one of their early managers. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I've read the comments, back to the other question, the comment sections of this show.
Oh.
Sometimes. I don't participate in them.
Because
Because if I do, it'll just become my Twitter feed, so I just read it. One of the things that comes up often is you'll have white hip-hop fans, because it's a lot of white kids who like UPROXX, right? And they'll say, why Kweli, are you always bringing up race with every guest? Like, why can't y'all just talk about the music? Why can't you just talk about the art? And what y'all just, the exchange you just had is exactly why.
Sure.
We cannot talk about this music without talking about the culture. That's the whole point of this show. And when I see that comment, it makes me realize we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Because we're exposing a person who thinks it's just all about the music. It makes them understand that either you have to get down with this culture conversation, or maybe this ain't for you.
But some people honestly don't know, and it's amazing that you got lucky and you grew up in Brooklyn, so you were, you know, in a kind of a well-rounded, depending on what part of Brooklyn you lived, environment. Because like for Roosevelt was an all-black neighborhood, and we had Latina people there, but we didn't have any white people. I didn't meet the first white person my age until I moved to Florida, and I was in 8th grade. And so it's a lot of things that I didn't understand, a lot of jokes that I said that I didn't understand that were not appropriate because I wasn't around white people.
Yeah.
And so that's why these conversations are so necessary, so people can see, you know what I'm saying, how it is around other black people.
I agree.
100. Yeah.
You took a Cool G Rap line and made it a hot song, but the song was a very serious song. I never heard hip hop deal with domestic violence in the way that you did. Last Good Sleep, that's the name of the song, right? Can you talk to us about that song? Why you felt the need to write it and how you felt after you put it out?
Yeah, that was a big song in my life. It was a breakthrough for me as an artist, I think. I wrote about it because it happened.
Okay.
I wrote about it because I was witness to, you know, the abuse of my mother, and very violent abuse. And you know, I had never attempted to write a song that really meant anything. Company Flow was really
You're having fun.
It was fun. It was saying the rawest shit. It was playing with language. It was one-upping each other. It was like trying to make someone's jaw drop with coming up with a witty thing. There was some political strain. There was a little bit of fuck you rebellion in there involved, but that was about as evolved as it got. And when we were doing the album for Jared over there for Rawkus, when we were taking the EP that we did and turning it into a full-length album, hence Funk Crusher Plus. We knew we had about 2 more songs that we wanted to do, and we each wanted to do a solo jam, and we talked about it, and we were like, well, let's do something that kind of means something to us and our lives. We literally talked about it, and I think that this was a song that I was trying to write for a long time, and I never did. Now, to just a little bit of background is that my mother, you know, was in a very abusive relationship, and this was something that me and my sisters had, you know, lived through and witnessed, and I was, the Last Good Sleep thing was because I you know, one day it got really bad, and after that day, the locks were changed, and we never saw this dude again, and it was, you know, my mother was like, fuck you, you know, and but but it haunted me. It was a very tough thing for me. For years, I was having nightmares. I would say almost nightly. I was having nightmares about this shit. And I was also doing things like chasing people in the street, in the subway, because I thought it was this dude, and I wanted to fuck him up. You know?
That was traumatic.
Doing shit like running down into the subway because I thought I saw this dude at the edge of a crowd, and getting on the subway to fuck this dude up and realizing it wasn't him. Shit like that.
You feel like you should have been able to protect your mom?
100%. And that's a part of the song. If you listen to the song, it's really what it is. It's a reckoning with the feelings that I had. So I wrote this thing. It finally came out. It came out in one day, and it was called Last Good Sleep, because it was about the fact I really was not sleeping.
Yeah.
and you know, it's the first time that I ever did a song. I played it for my mother. She cried, you know, immediately, just broke down and sobbed, you know, because it was really a very real.
It's a powerful song,
for my
man.
life.
It's very raw. It's you know, I had an emotional response to it.
You know, it's the first jam that I ever did that anyone had an emotional response to in that way. And I was not expecting it. You know, I don't think I ever wanted to talk about it. I thought at the time, I was like, no one wants to hear about my shit like that. Because no one was really kind of really exposing shit like that at the time.
Right.
You know, not that often. It
wasn't that often, because I'll tell you how rare it was. The samples from Streets of New York, right?
Yeah.
And so Streets of New York was my favorite record for a couple of years.
Hell yeah.
You know, that's just yeah. Like
best New York jam ever made.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm DJing, I still throw that one in,
Yeah.
whether I'm gonna lose the floor or not.
Yeah.
They just need to hear that one.
Fuck the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck the floor.
Yeah.
The only other song that I know that's like that is Eve's Love Is Blind.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very powerful song.
But what's interesting to me I remember having a visceral, emotional reaction to this third-party story that G-Rap was talking about. The man downstairs must have drank too many beers. I don't know who this man is. It's just this guy in this story about
It's just a vignette.
Yeah, 8 million stories. This is just one of them.
Right.
Here you take the line and it's like, now here's the backstory. Here's the story of this man. This is who this man is. I'd never heard nobody do that before in hip hop. You know, and I want to thank you for doing it, because it opened me up as a writer.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. I mean, you know, it changed things for me, because I like I said, I didn't think anyone wanted to hear that, and I did it anyway. I had the idea that if I get too specific and too personal about my life, then it's going to alienate me from other people. And
The exact opposite.
it was the exact opposite. I realized that, in fact, the more specific you get, the more detailed you get about your life, if it's genuine, it can have a bigger emotional impact.
Word up.
Because we're not all these unique individual snowflakes. We all have the same emotions. We all have the experiences may vary, but the results are ultimately, you can pick them from
That's
a category
what
of
makes the
about
music
5.
relatable.
So people will come up to me with tears in their eyes, and I was like, I was blown away. I didn't think that anyone would even get it, because who the hell would get this specific story about seeing your mother, being in their bedroom and seeing your mother as all the commotion peeking your door and, to make sure that you're all right, and her face is, fucking, purple mashed potatoes, And it changed me, and I think that it sent me in a direction. And then when I went into my solo work, post-company flow, I started really exploring that stuff even more, because I was addicted to it. I was like, oh shit, because it healed up. So backtrack a little bit. I won't go too long on this, but you asked. So what happened about how I felt after I made it? Well, it was the first song that I ever cried listening to after I had done it. That's a fact. And I don't know if even there have been that many more since then.
Right.
But my mother also did, and I remember I played it to her in her kitchen, and she burst into tears, and we had never
Talked about it.
So that was therapy for y'all.
And I hugged her as she's crying. I hugged her, and I said, it's okay. It's over now. It's over now. And the thing that was crazy was that it was at that moment. It ended.
Wow.
It was over, and it never had been. And when I was saying it, I didn't think it was true. When I was saying it, I thought I was saying it for her.
Right.
And I literally had never had another nightmare again about that. And I forgave the dude.
It's the power of the jam.
Forgiving doesn't make them right, it makes you free.
That's right. That's it.
Correct.
Can we talk about cheap cigars for a second?
Sure.
You named yourself El Producto.
Yeah.
El Producto, when I was growing up, was the cigar
Yeah.
that you smoked the shit out of.
Oh, yeah.
After El Producto, I guess it went Philly, right?
Philly.
White
then
Owl.
White Owl, then Backwoods popped on the
Backwoods,
scene.
then
Right?
Dutch
Wait, you were
Masters.
smoking. Wait.
El
You were-
Producto's a cigar.
But he was just the cigar you're supposed to roll weed up in. You
Yeah.
were just smoking just for
No,
fun.
I was rolling weed.
Oh, okay. I was like, let me get this clear.
No, you know what? Here's what it was. Originally, I was like, This was like at like 15. I was like, I'm the lyrical Punisher. and then after a while, I was like, that's pretty silly. but I've got all these songs saying El-P, and then I was like, well, how can I make this a little bit less corny and a little bit less nerdy? And then I was
El-P, lyrical. Okay.
yeah. So it was El-P, and then I was like, well, and I was literally just freestyling, and there was a box of fucking El Productos on the desk, and I just said El Producto, and I was like, all right, that's it, that's cool.
It's a good rap name, bro.
Yeah, it's all right, it's not bad. It's got the
El-P
prerequisite
is kind
white
of
E.
like my
you know?
initials, so because I'm Leigh Patterson. If you take out the Jasmin,
El-P, huh?
just trying to make myself connect.
Yeah, no, we're connected now.
So just, can we talk a little bit about Def Jux?
Sure.
Because you spoke it in this interview about not wanting to do a label situation. What's amazing to me is like Company Flow was this phenomenon. Def Jux was a phenomenon. Run the Jewels is a phenomenon. You're able to do this several times over. You know, Def Jux, I've heard you speak about it becoming a culture that you didn't feel a part of after a certain point. Is that accurate?
I think that I understand what you're saying. I think that at a certain point, part of me felt like the intention of what it was wasn't being reflected back in the attention that I got. I felt like a little bit misunderstood, and also I felt like it was a little self-fulfilling. Like it was kind of like it had started as something that was the extension of what we all love, which was different types of people doing different type of shit, and we were trying to get it out there, you know, and what radiated back ultimately was sort of like a reaction that I felt a little bit like, man, maybe we shouldn't be packaging this all up, because when you package it all up, then we're all in the same boat. Like, you know, like we're like, it's easy to dismiss a whole group. If you fall out of fashion, and you're associated, there's 30 fucking people in the same group that can be dismissed with one sentence. And each of these artists were brilliant in their own right and had their own lives and their own dreams. And I'm seeing it get, the thing is, never get too fucking amped about being the guy of the moment. You know what I mean? Because that shit swings. If you're the guy of the moment, then you will be the clown of the moment eventually too, or the dude who's getting replaced by the new guy of the moment.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous gambit, you know, but it wasn't the reason why I stopped Def Jux, but it definitely, towards the end, it was a part of my philosophical issue with it. I was like, man, this isn't really what I meant, you know? I didn't mean, let me separate all these people from the way that everyone else looks at all the other shit that's going on. I just was trying to prop up and support stuff that I thought was cool. That's it. And, lesson learned. It was interesting, you know, and I've always sort of had that. There's always been a little bit of a difference in the way that I looked at it, and sometimes how the attention came back and was classified as.
That's
you know?
my whole career.
Like, you couldn't tell a motherfucker that I listen to Jay-Z at a certain point. People would be like, "Well, of course you hate Jay-Z," you know, and I'd be like, I hate Jay-Z. Like, really? I'm from Brooklyn.
I'm still
right?
from
Like,
Brooklyn. I still love hip hop.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, that was one of the reasons, one of the just internal problems I had with the whole shit, where I was like, you know, am I doing everyone a favor by
You were,
this?
man. You definitely were. I mean, it's almost like you were too successful. Yeah, it was like, there's so much talent. Like the Weathermen, you know, that came out of the Def Jux situation, right?
Sure, it came out of our friendships, and, you know, We never really did an official release, you know, on
Right.
Def Jux or anything like that. But that
Rest
was
in peace
all
to Camus.
Yeah, rest in peace, Camus.
Rest in peace to, I got my Pumpkinhead hat on.
PH.
You know, rest in peace to Sean Price.
Yeah, man.
Prodigy. These are all people our peers.
Yeah.
This is our age. You talked about when you get to 50. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I was like, because I
I'm
told him, I
out.
said, Run the Jewels is still dangerous. He said, we ain't 50 yet. How have you maintained, self-care wise, health wise, or have you?
Oh yeah. Oh, I have.
Yeah, because
I
we're
mean-
going.
I mean,
we're,
first
we're-
of all, I'm
we're
in
dying
perfect
on it.
physical condition.
Amen.
No, you know, I used to do a lot of drugs and drink a lot and party a lot, and I was unhappy, and I was, you know, I don't think that's a particularly unique or interesting story, but yeah, man, yeah, I fucking changed.
Right.
I had to change.
Right.
I had to change. I could, you know, we were talking about whiskey, you know, and Qua offered me some whiskey, and I was like,
We drink like cowboys and bank robbers around here.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, because he knew back in the day that I used to drink my ass off.
Yeah.
I used to drink
That
some
was
whiskey.
my drink too.
And I told him that I quit actually drinking whiskey in 2007, and you know, because I don't like apologizing to people. And I was like, I'm apologizing way too fucking much for whiskey to be the reason. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm a child of alcoholics, and you know, and you know, I always had that edge. I always had that edge in my life. Like it was always walking the razor's edge. Am I gonna be a dude who parties, who's kind of crazy, or am I gonna be literally a substance abuser? Am I gonna go down the same path that my mother and my grandmother, who drank herself to death in a hotel room, and to the point where the dog jumped off the fucking balcony, you know? Am I gonna go down that path? So you get to a certain point where, just like anybody, I think, you know, you grow up a little bit and you start to realize, and fuck the philosophy of it, I just can't be hungover anymore, man.
Word up.
I can't, because
shit to do.
this shit is 2 days now.
Right, now it's taking in.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, you know, the self-care thing is really interesting, and it's something that you almost wish you didn't, like I did it as a result of just getting older.
Mac Miller had a record on his called Self Care right before he passed.
Wow.
Did you get a chance to get familiar with his music? You get to
A
know
bit, and you know, and you know, he had reached out. I regret this. He reached out. He had moved to New York for a little while, and he reached out to me and was like, "Let's get up, let's make music." And I wasn't around. I was touring. I was doing, and so we never. It was like kind of the year before he passed, and I was like, when he passed, I was like, shit, like I never got that chance.
Right.
We always meant to.
Right.
We were talking. We meant to do that, and I wanted to show him New York. I wanted to, you know, he kind of was reaching out for that. He was like,
Yeah.
I don't have anyone here yet. You want to hang? You want to do some
Right.
music or whatever? And I was like,
Man, he's a good dude.
I'm out. I'm not even there. You know. So, yeah, but I never really got to hang with him.
So Run the Jewels, y'all found success like in your 40s, but now you're doing big festivals and tours with sometimes artists who are doing hip hop who are way younger than you.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for those artists? You're like an elder statesman at this point.
Do I have advice? You better rehearse.
Rehearse.
Because there's a couple of fat old guys that are about to blow you off the stage.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. I love that. With that being said, you are working on the next Run the Jewels.
100%.
Anything you could tell us about it? Is Kweli on it? Beyond that, is there anything you could tell us? Anything you could tell us about it?
I mean, it's starting to take full. It's starting to really, you know, it's starting to really take shape. It's almost there. So I think it's the hardest record we've ever done. I think 100%.
That's y'all done some hard records.
It's maybe front to back the hardest record that we've ever done. I think we kind of you know, the last record, Run the Jewels 3, was with me and Mike really we were really wrapped up. This is the lead up to fucking Trump becoming president. You know, this is the year in which the that Eric Garner was was murdered.
Can't Breathe.
Mike Brown. We're coming off of the Mike Brown thing. This is the year where the emotional impact of all of this insane injustice was happening, and so I think we made an album in a lot of ways that reflected that. And we call it our blue record because there was a lot of really moody shit going on, and there was a lot of turmoil for us in our minds and in our souls and what we were saying. And I think with this one, we really are getting to, I don't want to say we're getting back to something, because I don't feel like we're defined quite yet, but I think that we really got in touch with our love again, of the joy again of just nasty ass rap records. Like we're looking at EPMD, we're looking at we're looking at DOC, we're looking at I think that we wanted this record is really just a fucking savage, fun, funky, angry, dope shit talking record with a couple of moments of real a couple of really tangible sort of payoff emotional moments.
That violent home invasion music. But if the person robbing your crib had some bars to drop for you.
Right. or you see him and you forgive him.
Right.
Nah, but I will say this, man, and I'm not one to talk about my music, because at the end of the day, we could think it's the greatest shit in the world, and motherfuckers could just decide that they're over it, But I think that we're making the best record we've ever made in our lives, and I'm really excited about it. I don't know, I hope it says, I hope it feels as good, because the feeling of it is joyful. I hope that it feels as good to everyone else that as it has been to us.
I'm excited for it.
Speaking of Trump. And Killer Mike. Killer Mike is a Bernie Sanders man, pretty much through and through, unless maybe when it comes to the guns. Where's your stand on the upcoming elections?
Motherfucker.
Well,
God damn it.
Get to it, baby.
This is why I have Killer Mike. I really liked Bernie. I really like Bernie. Now, I hadn't voted in years until Bernie. I had a perspective on it that I thought I was pretty secure in.
I get that too.
I was pretty secure in my perspective, which is that I don't vote in a fucking beauty contest when I know the judge just took $100. Why are you asking me to pretend to participate in something that's so clearly flawed and has been tampered with? And
a valid critique.
And I'm not saying that I believe it 100% yet, but this is where my head was. This was the critique I had. I was like, listen, and I'm from New York, so I know exactly who we're voting for. Win. So my only in my head.
Positive, please, guys.
Hold on, listen, this is getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah, I see where he's going with this.
In my head, I was like, the only tangible result of involving myself in this in these elections is to conscientiously object to participating in something that I thought was a sham. My voice, this is not what I'm saying now. Right. This is what I thought.
I was at the same place, so I know exactly what you're saying.
My voice is louder by objecting than it is by contributing or participating in something that is deeply flawed and that I suspect is also corrupt.
Right.
That said, my perspective changed a little bit, and I will give Mike this. Mike did this for me, and it's one of the things that he affected in my life in a positive way. And that I really think was important. He taught me something, and I don't think he meant to teach me anything, but he did.
Yeah.
And we were talking, and I was telling him this, and I was so secure in this perspective, and that ended up boiling down to I don't vote, right?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I have to, because these little policies, they drip down to my community in a real way.
That's right.
And I was kind of blown away by that, because I realized at that moment that my good intentions objection was rooted in entitlement, and it opened my head up. I was like, it was very amazing, and I love Mike for this, because I was like, I haven't had my wig peeled back, like just that moment of clarity.
Not wig.
You know, just really easily, all of a sudden, just changed everything that I thought about it. And now I'm not saying that I still don't believe that there's corruption or that there is.
All your critiques are still valid about you probably critique the Electoral College and money in politics.
But
that's still real.
The combination of that realization that what I was saying was somewhat from a position of entitlement, and also that there was this dude who, for the first time in my life, that I could tell, really, even beyond Obama, straight up, because not to say that Obama was not this incredible, impressive, eloquent human, but in terms of just being like, this is the realest fucking dude that I've ever seen talk about this shit, and he's got this history of being real about it. That's what caused me to participate, and so yeah, we'd all be way the fuck better off if someone like Bernie fucking Sanders was our president, no question. Do I think that anything good is gonna happen? No. People ask me like, do you really think Trump can win again? And I'm like, bitch, Trump didn't win the first time. So yeah, if that's the case, because the lines have been drawn, and that said, yes, I think he could win. Yes, I think he could not win. Who the fuck knows? I'm not gonna be. I have changed my position on whether or not I participate. I will participate.
I'm gonna choose to believe that America is not gonna put Trump back in office.
America didn't put him in office.
Yeah, well,
he didn't
facts
put
don't
him in
require our
office.
belief.
They did not.
Well, whoever put him in there, I'm gonna choose to believe that they will not put him back. That is
you
my
gotta
positive
make a phone call to
manifestation.
Russia.
You're right.
Listen,
the
man,
great hack is in
we have a
effect.
couple of more new moons before the election. Just start manifesting that shit.
I mean, the real fact of the matter is that we, I think we need to give up on the representation of what we want being at the highest level of politics. In terms of people, in terms of our spiritual and human beliefs, something rooted in empathy and something rooted that's not cynical. I don't think that that's ever now again going to be represented on a high level in politics. I also don't think that that they are holding all the cards. I think that the second that we all decide that this shit is that is a no-go on this shit, the second we all stop taking the bait, listen, the ants can turn on the queen. You know
Power
what I mean?
numbers, right?
Yeah.
Proletarian.
And that's not just a physical reality thought. There's an energy and there's something that can't be stopped. Look, you look at the '60s and the reason why acid and the love vibe almost destroyed the authoritarian structure of America. The violence.
So imagine focusing that.
Almost destroyed it.
Word up.
I mean, sorry, I don't want to make my last statement about acid and shit.
But that's facts, because
so
acid
I guess what I'm
takes
saying
you
is let's
on
do
a journey
drugs.
through your mind, and it makes you think more.
Right.
So it's definitely, I can definitely see.
So
Ladies and gentlemen, Timothy Leary.
So I mean, to answer your question, about this is that I'm just as conflicted as anybody about the whole thing. You know what I mean? And you ask me about Bernie. It's like I can honestly say, like, I'm not out there stumping for anybody. You know what I mean? I'm not out there stumping for Bernie.
I do feel like as Killer Mike notwithstanding, there is a certain power in not supporting a candidate. I think Mike does it with grace.
He does it because he genuinely believes that this man, like he genuinely 100% believes in this man. He knows this man. He believes that he's genuine, and he believes that his philosophies are the closest to the philosophies of Martin Luther King politically that anyone else has been since that he's ever seen in a political spectrum. And I 100% respect his backing of it. Yeah. And I don't choose to involve myself in exactly the same way, but I would be really happy if that guy got elected.
Yeah, I like Bernie because he's from Brooklyn.
That's what I'm saying.
I like, I agree with the things that Mike likes about him are the same things I like about him. I don't know if he's going to get the nomination or not. That's a whole different conversation. I'm just not putting my name behind somebody. But how you arrived at that point, I arrived at that point reading about Malcolm X and Adam Clayton Powell, and how Malcolm he didn't even consider himself American. It didn't get more leftist than pro-black Malcolm X, you know? And Malcolm X was talking about, he was dissing Democrats, he was dissing Republicans, but Malcolm understood that the community could vote in blocks and come together as community and work with politicians like Adam Clayton Powell and do it in a revolutionary way, use voting as a revolutionary tool. And seeing it framed in that way, as an older man, I got it the same way that Mike framed it away for you. How much do you feel like that's growing up? Just comes with age.
What?
Just acknowledging that the way that you participate in the system doesn't have to be so counter, to the system.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that there's anything that's pure at this point when you're involving yourself and all that shit, right? It's because the stakes are too fucking high, and there have been generations upon generations of people who have been tainting it from the start and twisting it so that the odds of them losing power are much less. So there is no answer, there is no purity about the thing, but there's something beautiful about trying, and that's it, and like I've had meeting Mike was a very interesting thing for me because you had a very I was always like the cynic because I was the romantic whose heart was broken,
right.
And Mike was the romantic who ultimately also had strands of cynicism, and we've affected each other, and he's affected me, and this is why I can readily admit I don't mind admitting to anybody that I'm still evolving, and that I'm still changing my perspective. I'm very different than the way I used to be, but not internally, not in terms of really who I am. But refining the way that I look at it, understanding and learning about what it really is, and being open to learning from other people about it as well, still. I think a lot of people are so locked in and so unwilling to continue to learn that, they're just the same asshole they were 15 years ago.
Right, and growth is everything, right?
Yeah, so.
There's a man who never stops growing, y'all. Everybody give it up for El-P. People's Party.
El-P.